Alright, welcome back to the USMCVetGraham minis. We're going to start off today with prepping some soil and some twigs. So you want to set your oven to 170 degrees, and then you're going to time that for 1 hour, and that will sanitize your sticks and dirt that you got from your yard or potting soil. For me, I got potting soil, and I got some twigs from the backyard. We're just going to let that bake for an hour, and once that's done, it'll be sanitized and ready for basing. So we'll be adding those to our bases today as we get started on gluing and priming. What I'm going to do right here is, so I don't make a mess, I got my pan here that I baked everything in, and I got my dirt, and then I got a shifter. I'm going to shift the dirt so it's nice and fine in here, and then I get some of this other stuff that's in it out. So let's get that added to this. Okay. We're just going to shift that in here. So we get a nice fine dirt, and we're going to be using this for texture, and we're going to be gluing it to our base. This is obviously a way cheaper alternative than going and buying it. And then there's like roots and twigs and stuff in here that we'll be using. So once we get this all shifted, we're getting there though. Obviously we don't want the plant food in there and stuff, and I'll just put that back in the bag that I got it from. But there's like roots in there and stuff that I could probably use, and I'll put that in with my sticks. Since all this is sanitized already, I could use all of it. Make sure we get all of it. Alright, and then, let's see here. Like little sticks like that. Just add that to our bucket. Little logs and stuff. Go. Okay. Alright, and with that done, I'll just pour this in to the bag that we got it from. Yeah. I think we got plenty there, so I don't think we really need the rest of it that's in this pan, but I'm going to see if I can get it in there. Alright, and there we go. There's a couple big pieces in here that got in there. Let's take those out. Alright, so before I started recording, I started mixing up some drywall mud or speckle. I watched a couple of videos on people using speckle for basing. I'm going to mix some of this dirt in there to give it kind of like a gritty texture. Because we're going to be using this for battlefield basing. Yeah, that's a nice gritty texture right there. See that? Nice gritty texture. I think that's going to be good right there for our basing. Okay. Alright. And then we're going to set this off to the side because we'll be using this to glue on top later. So what I did with this, I just took some normal tape because I don't have any putty right now. And I already spent a bunch of money on getting the materials for this video. So we're just going to do a little cheap. Alright, let's go ahead and start basing this. So basically we're going to just take this and apply it to the top. You don't need a whole lot, but to make it go quicker, you just glob it on there. You just want to bring it to the edge. Sorry about that. Took it out of the camera view. So you see how I'm bringing it to the edges here, not covering the outer lip, because that's what's going to make the model pop a little bit. Don't worry about the speckle itself, because we're going to be priming this later and painting it, and then we're going to be gluing that dirt down, and then we'll be adding some more combat variation material to it. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you see how gritty that is? It's going to be our mud base right there. So right now it's kind of just like an even coat. I don't want it to be an even coat because it's obviously a battlefield, so I'm going to add some stuff to this. And what you're going to want to do is whatever touches this, you want it to be wet already. So I'm going to grab one of my cheap brushes here with a nice fine back tip to it, so like this right here. So kind of just like, I'm going to put like a little like indents in here for like footsteps and bullet holes. Alright, I got it wet here, so let's go on ahead and do this here. So like little footsteps. I want those indents because we're going to be adding some water texture to it as well, and that water texture is going to pull in these footsteps as if it was still muddy. Now this isn't fine enough for exactly what I want to do, like bullet holes and stuff, but I'm at least going to get those footsteps in there. And then I have an idea for another basing I'm going to do, but I'm going to have to get my tracks out for that. And I think that's pretty good. I don't think we really need to do much more to it. So this has to dry for 24 hours, and that's and then when we do our video tomorrow, we'll be doing the priming on this. Yeah, I like that. I think it's really good. I'll just sit there and let it dry now. We're going to move on to our next base. Real quick. I almost forgot. We went and got those twigs. And I'm going to... let's see. I kind of just want like a little branch. Kind of measure it out there. I'll set it in the side here. Right here. And we're just going to... Sorry if I'm shaking a little bit. Trying to be precise. I'm going to press it down into that base. And we're going to trim it a little bit. Because it's a little bit too big, but here. There we go. And we're going to take that brush we had earlier. We're going to press that into the speckle. So, there we go. I want the speckle to grab a hold of it. We're going to push some mud onto it. We're gonna bury it in a little bit of mud here. There we go. I think that's pretty good right there. Alright. There we go. I like that right there. Oh, I bumped into my camera. Alright, and then let's see here. Actually, instead of using that brush, I'm going to grab my Citadel Tools. I think this will be a lot better. Yeah, this tool right here that I got from Citadel. I'm going to start using this instead. Alright, moving back onto this project now. We're going to grab a little bit of our mud here, give it a little bit of a stir, keep it moist because it's going to dry on me. Sorry if I'm dragging it off camera a little bit. I'm just trying to get a good angle here to see what I'm doing. That's good. Yeah, I think that's good. Alright, then we're going to get our other tool out here. We're going to do little footsteps in there. I think this works a lot better than that brush we were doing. I'm going to put a bunch of footsteps in this one as if like multiple people have ran across here. Like so it's like if their toes are digging in and then they're pushing back on that mud right there. So I'm pushing in and then back. And then we're going to put some water texture in there and make it look like muddy footsteps here. Make sure all the edges are nice. Get a little mud here. And this one's going to be just like that. I'm not going to do anything else to it. Alright, and I'm going to get a little bit more stuff out. Alright, I got two things here. I got a thing of pebbles. So we're going to be mixing some rocks in there now. And then I got a bag of bigger rocks, which we'll see if we'll be using those. Depends. So I'm going to set these off to the side, and I'm going to open these up so I can add them to the bases. Alright. And then I'm just going to put a little bit here that I can grab. Just a little pile of them. Alright. And then I'm going to grab my tweezers. Alright. And we're going to grab our next base. There we go. Alright. We're going to grab our speckle. Give it another stir. Now, if you remember in the last video, the unboxing video, the commissar comes with a little rock that he stands on. And like I said before, since it's part of the actual model, I'm probably going to use it. So I'm going to put together the commissar here in a second, or at least get his legs out, so I can see where I want to put his rock on this for that extra detail. It's gonna look so good when it's done. Alright. Now I'm not gonna do anything extra to this one just yet. Like I said, I'm gonna get that commissar out. We're gonna start snipping. So I'm gonna set this one off to the side because we're gonna be using that for the commissar. So when snipping, you want to have the flat end, which is this side, close to the part where you'll be the miniature. You want to be careful too when you're doing this because you don't want to snip out any detail. So I'm going to start with the coat. And you don't need to be super close to the miniature like I am right now. You just need to be back a little tiny bit. And we have files and stuff, so we'll use files for that to get that out. We're going to snip just a little bit above. There we go. And then we should be able to get him out. Okay. So now we got his legs out here. I'm going to clean that up real quick. That way we have a nice flat foot. Be careful how you cut because these are really sharp. So what I'm doing right now is I'm using the back of the blade to just smooth it out a little bit. I'm not going to see the bottom of the foot, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. Okay, so now we got the legs done. We got all the stuff on the bottom of the feet taken out. So then we need that rock now, which is right here. Now let's clean that up here, where it got snipped from. You don't need to clean this up too much because it's going to be, I'm going to stick it down into that speckle. So some of this is going to get covered up anyway, but the parts that are not going to get covered up, I don't want showing. So I'm just using the back of the blade, smoothing it out. So there's our rock. I believe that was for the peg for the foot, but it's not a big deal. I'm just going to glue it on there anyway. I took that peg off. Alright, so when he is on here, push it down into the speckle. Push. It's okay if all of it moves because we're going to be pushing it back into it. I'm going to dig his foot down so he has a spot for his foot, as though he's slipping in the mud a little bit. And we're going to clean this up here. clean the mud off the foot here real quick so that doesn't dry on there. Now I'm going to take this mud out here. I'm going to push some of the mud onto the rock. Fix this. I have the spot where his foot goes already in there. And I'm going to avoid touching that. We're going to check this again. Make sure we have this the way we want it. So that is exactly the way I want that. There shouldn't have to be anything touched, anything moved. That should be exactly the way we're going to want our commissar. Just getting a closer look at it, making sure. Looking at the picture for a little inspiration. Alright, I'm going to clean that off there. I'm happy with it. So, we are going to leave that like it is. And then now you see, that since I pushed that foot in, you have a nice foot indent in there. And then the mud is pushed up around the sides. So he's been standing there for a second. He pushed his weight down into his foot and left that foot indent. And then we have the rock now with the texture on it. And we're going to be priming this, so when we prime it, we won't have to worry about it. But we're going to push this mud up against the rock a little bit more around the edges. Cover up any gaps that were made. And I think that is going to be perfect. I removed all the excess mud that got pushed up against the rock because it left a huge amount of mud right there on the side. So I wanted to remove that because that's going to be too much pushed up on the side of the rock there. But yeah, that looks good. Alright. I don't want to overdo this base, so I'm not really going to add much more to it. I think I'll add like maybe one stick to it. Or maybe like a little log. So sometimes less is more. We're going to leave it like it is. And we're going to let that one dry. I watched a video last night where they took the tracks and did indents with the tracks from like tanks and vehicles and stuff. So I'm going to get our prime out and I'm going to grab its tracks real quick. So yeah, you see like right there, we're going to put some track marks into the mud. We're going to clean that up a little bit. Wear and tear. Alright. Okay, so let's get our next base going. Again, spreading it out to the edge, but not covering the outer edge. Because we're going to want puddles and we're going to want all other stuff. And then after we get that the way we like it, fix this edge real quick. There we go. Okay, we're going to take that track now. We're going to wet it first, so let me get my brush. Line those up. So now that we got a nice track mark going through the middle there, I'm going to grab a rock here, push that down in there. Now we're going to take our tool here, and we're going to clean it up so it's actually there we go. That one's done. Alright. Next one. For this one, I'm going to go for a little bit of maybe like an old explosion shell or something right in the middle. Make it kind of a little deep. That way I have a little bit of exploding ground mixed in there. Start off with. So I'm going to add a little extra to this one compared to the other ones because I'm going for that little bit of a crater in the middle. Let's dig out the center here. Start removing pieces. So we're going for a crater right in the middle here. Alright, now that I removed some of it, we're going to get our tool here without bumping into my camera. I'm going to use the end I've been using. So, this one is a crater. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start spinning it in a circle once I have the crater formed that as deep as I want it. And I'm going to start bringing it up a little bit because you got the impact right in the middle and that blows everything out. You want something like that. Alright. When I do the water for this one, I think for this one, I'm going to stick the guy on there and have his foot in there and pour that water texture around his foot so he's kind of stepping in the exploded crater here. And then his foot is submerged a little bit in the water. So I think that's what I'm going to go for on this one. And then I want to fix up the outside a little bit because it's a crater, it's not a hill. But I don't want the outside smooth either, so I'm going to be roughing it up a little bit. I'm just fixing it right now so it's not a hill. like that. See, you got a little lip there, and then it's coming down a little bit, and it's also up. I want to fix that. So we got the exploded crater there. I got one side here that I feel like I need to touch up. Yeah, that should be good. And then roughed up the outside edges. And then I'm not adding anything else to this one. This one's just going to be exploded crater. And then later, when we come back and we start adding the dirt to the outside, we're going to keep the inside a little bit smooth, roughed up like we have for the explosion, and then add the dirt on the outside as if the dirt in an actual explosion bursted out and then landed around it. So that's going to be really cool to look at after this dries, and we get that started. So as you can see, there's kind of like there's no actual pattern going on here. I'm just making random battlefield bases. We're just trying to make them as realistic and as cool as possible. We're not trying to do the same thing twice, though some of them might look the same, just slightly different when we're done. So this one, I think I'm going to add more rocks to this one. Or maybe more sticks. Yeah, let's do this one like with a bunch of sticks this time. Alright, let me mix up my putty here. Alright. Let's see what we can find here. Move this out of the way for a second. And when this dries, I'll add a little bit of glue to keep the sticks in there. A little better. Cleaning up the side there. Yeah, I think that's a good one. Got a little footprint. I think that'll be good. Still got 6 more to go, guys. Next one, I'm going to do a lot of rocks. Maybe a stick and a lot of rocks. We'll see. Now add more grass to this too. After all this dries and we get it primed and painted, I think this one's gonna have more grass, grass, and then I might add some tufts. Make this a little barren, maybe, I don't know. We'll see what we decide to do later. Like I said, I'm not trying to do anything too similar. I want to do everything different. Sorry if I'm pausing there, I'm concentrating really hard. That looks good. Again, let's get our speckle in there. Give me a second, put my clippers away. Now, another variation to add to this would probably be like if I had any extra bits like for guns or anything like that. But yeah, I don't want to use those just yet. I mean, future projects for basings and stuff, I might do that. But right now I need to actually figure out what I'm going to do for my army, for weapons and stuff. So we'll wait and see exactly what we decide to do before adding other stuff like that. Like, I know for a fact I won't use bolter pistols. So if I wanted to add bolter pistols to these basings as like someone dropped a gun on the battlefield or something, I could definitely probably do that right now if I wanted to. Alright. So I wanted to do wood and rock on this one. So let's go back here. This would probably be a good piece. It's too long though. Let's do this here. Little assistance from the tweezers. Okay. And then let's add some rocks in there too. Then I want to add puddles. Footsteps. Good. Hit my camera again. Now let's try and figure out what we're going to do for the next one. So coming back to like the second one we did, which I just made it very muddy, like a bunch of people walked through it. I think I might do another one like this maybe, but using the commissar's legs that we cut out already, using his footsteps. But maybe, I don't know. Trying to think. I want to see how the track one is doing because it's still drying. Let's see. Oh yeah, those tracks look good. Okay. And let's see. I got 4 more bases, and I got to figure out what I'm going to do for them. Maybe like a larger log. Like, let's get a thicker stick out here. Yeah, that might be nice. Just right across the bottom there. And then need to go right there maybe. I don't want it sticking off, but I do want the splintered wood in there. I'm not adding it to this one, I'm just using it for comparison right now. And I think what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to do the commissar footprints for more realistic footprints. And then I'm going to add that log into this one. I think that's what I'm going to do for this one. Now some people, they'll glue everything together, put it on the model, and then they'll add the terrain and stuff around the model. I just looked at a lot of different videos, and I think this is the best way to do it, is do your basing first. And then just glue the model to the basing when it's done. Because you get so much more detail, you get so much more realism to that model. And now, just because I was in the Marine Corps doesn't mean I don't know anything about doing art and stuff. I mean, obviously, you got your YouTube tutorials, and then you got your actual classes. When I was in high school, I majored in art before I went to the Marine Corps. And I really enjoyed art. I have some artwork from high school, not a lot of it saved, because, I mean, it's been years. I mean, I went to high school. My last year of high school was 2010, and I turned 30 this year, and I took art classes all through high school, and I really enjoyed working with clay, so that's kind of why I got this going on. One project I had, I wish I would have took a picture or something to show you guys, but I was in a Call of Duty in high school, Modern Warfare. And the desert map where you have the road going through the middle with the tanks destroyed and then the Humvees destroyed, I believe the map was called Ambush or something. I actually took that entire map and I made it out of clay in high school. And I painted it all up to the same colors, desert theme, everything. It looked exactly just like the map. And I had the destroyed tanks in there, the destroyed Humvees, and it was basically my artwork because I loved Call of Duty Modern Warfare back then. And sadly, over the years, it didn't take too kindly to it, and it was starting to fall apart, so I ended up getting rid of it. I also took some photography classes my senior year. to see if I enjoyed photography as much as I enjoyed art class. And I have to say, I actually enjoyed art class more than photography. Doesn't mean I didn't 100% hate photography, because I enjoyed pinhole. Pinhole photography was pretty nice. I thought that was really interesting and neat. So I did enjoy doing some pinhole photography back then. The online editing software has never really been my forte, so I struggled a little bit in editing. That looks nice. So, sorry if I'm rambling on here a little bit. I just want you guys to know a little bit more about me and my background. Like, I'm not just coming into 40K and miniatures itself without knowing nothing. I did take some art classes in high school, all through high school. So I do have some experience in there. Alright. What I'm doing here is I'm taking the commissar's foot, and I'm going to put some indents in here. I'm going to wet his foot, though, so it doesn't stick. I'm going to add a really small stone to the side here. Well, actually, first I need to fix this because it bubbled up a little bit, which isn't bad because, I mean, that's realistic. You step in mud, it's going to bubble up around the edges, but I don't want it to bubble up that high. And I'm just going to pat this down a little bit. Alright. And again, fix this up a little bit. I want some of that mud coming onto the destroyed log. Alright, and then back to that rock I had. Just going to press that down in there. I'm going to bring the mud over onto the rock. It's going to help hold it in place, and then it's also going to show that the rock's been there for a long time. So you got those footsteps in there, you got the log, cleaning up the base a little bit, right. And then you got the rock in there. I'm going to come back to that crater that we did just to show you how it's drying right now. It's coming along really nicely. Let's do the tracks again. I'm going to dig that out, and I'm going to do the track on one side, and then I'm going to add a crater next to it, just a tiny crater. So we're going to do tracks and then crater. I think that's what we're going to do. Alright. Now, since we're doing tracks on one side and we're doing a crater on the other, I need to add a little extra speckle to this one, because we're going to need those deep indents. And I know this video is going to be a little long, probably almost one of my longer videos. When we get into painting, those are going to be probably even longer. As I learn more about editing software, as the channel grows and goes, I will probably be doing speed ups. I'll come back and edit these videos and clean them up and make it so you guys don't have to sit there and hear me blabber on constantly, and you guys could just get straight to the tutorial on how I'm doing this. I have done streaming in the past. Like I said in my past videos, I do have a Twitch channel, and that's for purely just gaming. I play War Thunder. I play Tarkov with friends. Not much of a solo Tarkov player anymore. I used to do a lot of solo on the first 2 wipes of Tarkov, but I just don't find it fun as I used to. Having friends playing on Tarkov is so much more fun, and you can cover more angles, assist them with their missions and loot. We're going to do a track on one side here. Okay, I'm going to wet this up with a brush. That way it doesn't stick as bad. Alright, we're just going to push that in there as hard as we can. I think I already messed up on this one actually. Sorry. I need to get that little extra detail right here. So this is what I was working on, was getting this pushed back up a little bit. It's okay if it's out a little bit, but I didn't want it on the base outer edge. And now we're going to add a little crater on this side. So if you look down in there, you can see the tracks there on the right. I'll get some water in there later. Now let's spin this around for that crater. We're going to take some out. This is going to be an old crater, so, and realistically speaking, when the track comes through, it's going to push that dirt up to left and right. And this is going to be an old crater, so I'm going to keep this lip right here, and it's going to look like it's pushing back into the crater as real tracks would do. They push that mud into that crater. And then we're going to remove some of the mud on the edge here. Clean it up a little bit. Then that's going to have some good mud inside of it later. Gotta slope this a little bit for that mud. I like that these have a rough texture on them, because that catches that mud It gives it something to bind to also. I think this one we're just going to leave plain like this. Let it dry like that. Just a quick and easy. And then we'll do more with the last one we got here. And here is our last one. Got a little bit too much on there, so we're going to strip some off there. Make sure we don't have any on the base. Lip there. Okay. Alright, and then let's just do more sticks on this one. Yeah. I mean, obviously we can't. This is going to be a little bit too thick to add to that tiny little base. So let's find something that we could take off of it. Thinking maybe something growing out of the side of it, maybe. Something crooked like that. Stick some rocks around it. And then, why not? We'll do another track mark. Get some water on it. Alright, and then we just gotta do a little cleanup. I think that looks good. A little track mark, a little rock, got a little tree that was snipped or broken apart on the edges. Might come back after this dries, maybe light the ends on fire a little bit, make it look like it was burned. Actually, yeah, I think we'll end up doing that. We'll add some burn marks onto it, and then when we prime this and paint it up, I'll add a little scorch mark paint on there too. Some charcoal. But yeah, we got the yeah, it looks really good. Alright, here I'm going to put all these on the table so you can see them all together. So there is all of our bases right there that we did today. We got our rock one, we have our crater, we have our track with small rocks, we have our commissar with the rocky stands on, we have our messy mud, we have our plane, we have our footsteps with small stick, we have our tree with track and some rocks, we got our little log here that was busted off with footsteps in it that we did with the commissar's feet. We have our bundle of wood that was just fallen over, broken, whatever. And then we got some sticks with footprints and a couple rocks. So we did a variation of different things here. And then back here we got our track with a little bit of a crater from an explosion next to it. And we're going to let these dry overnight and make sure they're nice and hard for when we prime it and then start painting it tomorrow. And tomorrow, after we get these primed, we'll get these painted up before we do anything else, and then we'll do a video just for these. And then I'm going to do another video of us getting ready to glue the other miniatures together, and the follow-up video after that. And we'll get these all based and painted. Alright, and we're back. So these are completely dry now, as you can see. And I brought my torch out, and we're going to torch these a little bit for battlefield look. So let's start. I'm going to start with this one here. Still burning a little bit. Just my fingers here. There you go. It's going to look a lot better than having this cut ends on it. And we're going to do the same thing here. And just burn those out with our wet fingers. There we go. Alright, that should be good. That's all we're going to do. We're going to leave the other ones like they were. Alright. So I went to the store and I got some air dry molding clay. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to make some small sandbags in case we want to add any of them to our bases here. Just like little scattered remnants of sandbags on the battlefield or something like that. And then I could also use this for future setups and stuff. I'm not sure how much of this we're gonna make. I'll roll this into a little ball. Alright, then we're gonna roll it to a long cylinder. And when we get it to the size that we think we want it, which I think I want it just a tiny bit smaller, we're just going to push down on the top, gently, flatten it. And then we're going to take our sculpting tool, little sandbags. I don't want them square, I want them a little oval. So I don't want them square, I want them to look like they're pinched off. Lightly patting it. Every sandbag looks a little different depending on how you fill it. But they're obviously not going to have these frayed ends. And that's what we don't want. Now this is air drying, so we're going to have to let these sit and dry for a bit before we glue them to the base. And then we're going to go prime today. And I decided to turn this video into one long video of just doing bases. So I'm gonna take me a little time to do the editing, but I'll put everything together, have that ready for you guys to watch when it's done. I did watch a YouTube video on doing these sandbags. I don't remember who it was that I was watching. When I find that out, I'll put it in the comment or the description, obviously, so you guys can see how they did it. But when they did it, it seemed like they did a so much easier, better job when they just cut them. Like, I mean, they cut them and they were just done. Like, they didn't have to do anything else to them. Like, I should not be having to do what I'm doing right now to it. But I mean, a lot of it's going to be covered up anyway if you put them on top of each other, and then if you stack them on top of each other. I just don't like the frayed ends. Just going to grab these bases and see which ones I want to add them to. That way I can shape them to how I want it to sit on there. Now I'm just taking the back of my razor here and just gonna run it down the side a little bit. Just kind of looks like that sewed edge of the burlap sack. Just a little bit of texture, but when we do that wash later, they'll pick it up. These are fairly small, so I don't think it'll... Still waiting for one more item to come in the mail for these bases. That's going to be fun. Ordered a leaf punch. Make little tiny leaves. That way when that comes, I can show you guys how to make homemade leaves using a leaf punch, and then adding those to our bases as well for fallen tree limbs and stuff like that, and like dead leaves that came off of them, or just making live leaves even for like a base. Alright, so our sandbags are done. Now what I'm wanting to do is grab like our plain one here that we just dirtied up, and I'll see how I want to put these sandbags on it. I think that would look good. Just bent the corner so it's like sitting up against the other sandbag. I think that looks good. I gotta make sure I have enough room for the other model though that's gonna be sitting on here. So I'm gonna bring those to the edge as much as possible. I'm not gonna glue these in yet because, like I said, we still gotta let these dry. I just want like a random sandbag just sitting. These bases are so small you can't really put much on them. But I think that's all I'm putting on is just those two bases. I could save these sandbags and let them dry for a later project. So I'll just move these to the side. Like I said, I'm going to let those dry. We'll figure out what we're going to do next here. So we're going to get started on our basings now. So I'm going to grab some brushes here. Let's see. We're just going to grab some brushes we don't really care about. These are just cheap brushes. Just going to dab it on there so we don't rip up anything too important, along with getting in those crevices for a little bit more detail. You don't have to be neat. We're going to be repainting the rim black at the end. Just going to cover the whole thing. And then we'll come back and do highlights on the rocks and stuff later, with like a gray and then some kind of highlight. And then I'm going to take another brush I don't really care about. I'm going to wet that. I'm just going to try to get the bristles kind of together. We're just going to go around the edge and clean that up so we don't have any big pools. I was able to find spots that I missed, and I went back in with the brush and touched those up. And the color I'm using for this, if I didn't mention it before, is base Rhinox Hide. And that's going to give it a nice muddy look, and it's going to dry nice. I don't want the paint to pool in the foot here, because we're going to be adding other stuff to that, like an actual foot. And you don't want it to pool too much, so you're going to come back in with a dry brush. You're going to soak up any excess pools, because those pools are going to be filled in later with our water texture. So I'm just going to dry the brush off, and then I'm going to go around and pick up any pooling paint. Now you can water down your paint for this, and it might help you get in the crevices a lot quicker than what I just did. But when we go in with that shade, it's going to shade in all the crevices anyway. Especially a watered down shade will get in there. Alright, I'm going to give this another once over and make sure that we got everything. Moving on to the next one. Same thing. And when it dries, you're gonna, that texture that we added to our mud, which is our potting soil, that's really going to start to show. It's going to give it more of an earth feel. I think I'm going to water down the brown a little bit. I don't feel like I'm getting everything that I want. On a little bit better there. Now the junk brush that I'm using has really hard bristles. I probably should have wetted the brush first, but I would suggest getting a junk brush that has not so hard bristles, because you might be able to do a little bit better with that, along with not damaging the base by just running the brush over it. I mean, that's mainly why I have to dab the paint in right now, is because I don't want to rip up the base while I'm doing this. Alright. And then I gotta come back in with a dry brush and soak some of this paint up that's pooling. Like I said, we'll come in with water texture later and add water to any of these holes for that wet battlefield look. Alright, so now I'm going to come back in with our wet brush and clean up the outer rim. So it's not thick paint on there. We're going to come back over it with a black, so I just don't want it thick because then it's going to leave a texture. So we're just gently wiping it away from the base without hitting the actual upper part. And if you do, don't worry about it, just come in with your dry brush and just gently dab it with your paint, with your Rhinox hide. I don't know if you can see it in that kind of light, but I took a little bit of the paint off the top here. So I'm just going to do a little bit of a dry brush, and I'm just going to pat it, that dirt color. And then I think overall it looks good now. So when we come back in with that black later to clean up the edge, it should be good. I don't want to glob it on there, so I'm going to take a little of the excess paint off, put it on the tip of the bristles because that's what we're using anyway. Now when you start to get dry, if you want a quicker way to remove that excess blobbed paint that's in your cracks, just bring your brush back over it and then take it other places. So it looks like our stick wasn't in there good enough. So before I continue here and ruin it anymore, I'm going to grab the super glue real quick, and I'm going to grab my tweezers. I'm just going to move that super glue around a little bit underneath the actual stick. Get that super glue all over it, and then I'm going to move the stick back into where it needs to go. Now, I should have checked this before I started painting, so that's kind of my fault right there. Because now the paint wants to stick to my tweezers. Alright. It kind of made like a little bit of a texture around it, but that might be a happy accident. So we'll let that dry and see what happens. I can always pick at it with the tweezers. I'm going to clean my tweezers off of super glue and paint. I'm not going to touch the stick. I got to clean up all this extra paint that's on here. So I'm going to clean up my bristles real quick and give me a dry brush. I'm going to go in and remove all the excess paint real quick. So I'm going to let the glue and the paint dry, and I'm going to come back and finish this after that super glue dries. Alright, I'm going to set that there so I don't forget it. Before we continue, I'm actually going to get that super glue. I'm going to make sure all these sticks are going to stay so we don't have this issue again. So the reason why I'm blowing on it right now is to spread out that glue because it's kind of pulled up a little bit. I'm going to grab a junk brush real quick. I'm going to let that dry, and then I already super glued this yesterday. We had a little bit of an accident with this one. It fell while I was trying to spray paint it, and the rocks and the tree came off, but it's in there now, so we don't have to worry about that. Let's go ahead and paint this one next. We're going to dab it into all that detail. And I just did exactly what I said not to do. I added too much paint. But that's fine. We'll just come back, pick it up, move it to other places. I'm going to dry up my brush and get these tracks real quick because I don't want that paint to dry. Now when we come back in with the highlight, you'll be able to see the tracks a lot better. I'm sorry if you hear any extra noise in the background. My boys are a little loud. Once we actually get working on the basement craft room, I'm going to soundproof the ceiling. So it'll be a lot better and you won't hear all that extra noise from the boys. Alright. Now, the tree, I don't want to break it, so I'm going to come in with a lighter brush. I was using this to... Oh, here, I got some other brushes here. Let's see. This one should be good. Now, if you're thinking what I'm thinking right now is, why did we scorch the tips if we're just going to be covering it in paint? Well, the scorch was actually to break up the tips a little bit, so they're more like pointed and jagged instead of just snipped, and it gives it a little bit better detail. And then we'll be coming back in to paint this different colors and shades, and those tips that we scorched, we will actually be adding a charcoal grayish color to them, so they look like they actually were burning at one time, and which they were. And we will give it that battlefield look of catching on fire in the middle of a battlefield. And my boys might come down, say hi, just so you know if you hear another voice in here. And it's okay if a little bit of the green is showing from the olive drab coating, because then it kind of gives it a little bit of a mossy look, which I am fine with. And we're going to make sure we don't have any pooling paint. I'm just going to go back over it with a dry brush. My brush is completely dry right now. And I'm fine with the bristle marks, because that helps with the texture of the tree. That one's good to dry now. Spoke a little bit too soon. I still got to clean up the base. Now, so if you take a look at it, here, I'll see if I can get a better light here of it. So you can see the texture of the tracks. I got all that excess paint out of there. It's starting to dry really nice. When we do the highlights, you'll see it even better. And then we got the base a little cleaned up. It kind of already started to dry, which is my bad. I should have cleaned that up a lot sooner. But it should be fine when we put that black over there anyway. I could get some kind of thinner or paint thinner and take that off. Yeah, I'll see how it looks when I put the black on there. If it's really pudgy, then yeah, I'll take some paint thinner to it and then fix it. Alright, and then let's do this one next. I might stick with this one. I kind of like this one better. It's a lot softer. So let's see how it does. I mean, I'm not covering as much ground because this one's not as big, but I feel like the softer bristles just get in there better. Yeah, it's getting in there a lot better. So let's just stick with this and see how it goes. Alright, and we're going to dry off our brush here. Get it once over to get all the excess paint picked up. I might need to put some new tape on the bottom on this one because it seems to not want to stick anymore. Now this brush here that I cleaned up that super glue with, that's trash now. Yeah, that's trash. I feel like this one should be dry enough. Yeah, that one's just dry enough. I'm gonna come back in and finish this one. Alright, let's get this one out of the way. So this is our track and crater. Before we start on this one, I'm going to add a little bit more tape to it. I don't want it to fall off like it did before. Come back in with the dry brush, getting all that excess paint out. Touching up any spots with that excess paint. Alright. And then we're going to come back in, wet brush. I like the idea of the crater one, but thinking about it last night, I kind of thought, well, now I don't know if my actual guy could sit on this because of the crater, but we'll make it work. We'll figure it out. Dry out my bristles here so I could pick up all that excess paint. Alright, now I just let that dry. Clean up the base. We at least want to smooth out the base so when we put that black coat on, it'll go on a lot easier without any textures. Coming back to this base that we've already painted, there's some stuff sticking through, so I'm going to touch it up real quick. Let that dry. And then got this one here. After we finish this one, I'm going to show you our results for the sandbags that we did yesterday. I think they turned out pretty good, so I'm looking forward to showing you that. So let's get this one done, then I'll show you that. Now I'm going to dry off my brush and clean this up. Now the only reason I'm using a normal palette instead of my wet palette for this is because we're going through this so quickly that I don't feel like the wet palette is really needed. But when we get to start doing our miniatures, the actual army, I'm probably going to use the wet palette for that because I'm going to want to save as much paint as possible because we'll be going through so much detail and taking it even slower than what we're doing right here. I think that's cleaned up enough. Alright, now let's see. Yep, our primer is dry on the sandbag ones, so let's grab those real quick. So this is the first sandbag one. I got the sandbags glued on there. They dried overnight. It does take pretty much a whole night for those sandbags to harden. I added some wear and tear to the edges on the left one, along with the scratch going down the middle, and then gave it a little bit of line on the sides. I added 3 bullet holes to the top of this one because it's kind of like leaning forward. Alright. We're just going to coat this whole thing in brown again. I'll come back with a lighter brown for the sandbags later. We're going to go back in and get that excess paint out of the holes, or the craters or footprints. The bristle marks are going to add a little bit more texture to those sandbags. Now you can see my brush here at the end here. This is why you want to buy cheap junk brushes. Easy to replace, easy to use, and you don't care if you damage them. Just smooth out the edges. Try to clean it up a little bit. Nothing I can really do about that, it's super glue. So we'll just work with it. Here's the other sandbag. Oh, sorry. Here's the other sandbag. This one had like a little crater on the top of it already, a little wear and tear on the side, bullet hole in the top, and just a little bit of a tear. I'll get started on this one next. Now the only reason I'm doing the sandbags in a dark brown right now is because I'm going to add maybe a little bit of streaking of that mud just from old sandbags being out there and dragged through the mud and so forth and so forth. So give it a little bit more battlefield look. It doesn't really matter if I fill in the holes. I might come in with a detail brush, put a little bit black or like maybe a really light brown for that sand in there. Let's go ahead and start getting that thick stuff off the trim, or at least smoothing it out so it's a lot easier to paint later. Like I said before, we'll be going back over it with the black, so we're just mainly just aiming to thin that brown as much as possible. Alright, I'm going to grab another paper towel here because this one's pretty much used up. Or at least turn it inside out so I'm not wasting paper towels. Yep. Alright, we got one base left, and then we'll go and see if the other ones are dry so we can start doing shades. But we also need to check and see if our leaf is done. That we were staining earlier, the coffee things. I think this is on there pretty good. I don't think we need to add super glue to it. Dry off our brush here so it can pick up all the extra paint. Okay. Now just clean up that base. And for this one I just gave it a thin coat of brown all the way around. Easy to paint black. We're done with the dark brown. Make sure that's nice and closed. The next thing we're going to be doing is a little bit of a lighter brown. Just dry brush over it. Alright, so we just used the Ronix hide. This is the catch-on flesh, and it looks like it's a pretty decent brown. Just give it a good shake. And then we have our scrag brown. Okay. So I got my different browns here. And for the trees, I'm going to be adding a little bit of Death World Forest green mold to like the trunk. So I got Death World green mold, or World Forest. I got the base catch-on flesh, and then for my highlights I'm going to use scrag brown. Let's go back to our very first one we did. That's pretty dry. The coffee filters are still drying, so we're not ready for that yet. So anything that I'm going to be adding leaves to, we're not going to touch right now. But we can go ahead and get started on our next layer here because the paint's finally dry. So we're going to do a lighter brown, and we're going to do a dry brush. We're just going to use a big brush, and we're just going to use a lighter brown on top. So I'm going to give this catch-on flesh a nice good shake. So we're just going to get the tip of the brush bristles wet here, and then we're just going to get most, but not all of it off. Okay. Test that on our thumb here. Alright, and we're just going to give it a good, like, dry brush all over. Now the reason why I'm doing a second coat here with a dry brush is because mud is not just one color. You got light reflecting off of it. Let that one dry. We ripped up a little bit of the paint here. We'll come back in and touch that up. You don't really need to worry about it too much because we'll be doing a shade later. But if you see here now, it looks a little bit lighter from that dry brush. And then after this dries, we'll come in with a highlight. So we still got that dark underneath and then a little bit lighter on top. Down in the crater, I'm going to keep that dark. We're going to be putting water in that anyway. It's important to get the edges of the sandbags because those are going to be the highlights anyway. We're going to dry brush the tree as well. Now I'm going to go back in. I'm going to find anything that got torn up a little bit and touch it up, because I don't want that white showing from the mud. Feel a lot better if I had my spray or my airbrush, but I don't have it yet. There is a little spot in here. I think I'm going to need a really fine brush for that. So touch that up. Alright, the ones I touched up need to go somewhere else so I don't mix them up. So we're going to do the scrag brown for the highlight. So for this, I'm not going to clean out my brush. I'm going to keep it like it is so it mixes a little bit. And I'm going to be hitting edges and then the bristles a little wet. Getting those off. And we're not going to go crazy with this one. We're going to be actually hitting those higher points. Got a nice variation of 3 different browns in there. Good highlights. And I'm going to dry brush a little gray onto any stone, just the very tops. Have that mud around the tips and other places. And I'll come back and do that after we get done with this. And then I might have to go back in with another highlight if I cover it up on accident. Try to get all that out. Now for the crater, like this is an exploded crater. It could be old, it could be new. If it's new, I would probably dry brush some black around it and on the inner edge. This one's going to be old, so I'm going to keep it like it is. Yeah. This is an expensive brush, so I need to make sure that this is taken care of. Make sure there's no paint in it. And then I went online and I bought brush cleaner. So I'm going to take very good care of this brush right here. Wait 1 second here. And you're just going to twist it into it. By just twisting that in my hand. And then I'm going to put the protective cap back on it. I'm going to put that away. bright compared to the rest of it, we're going to be coming back in with Agrax Earth Shade when everything's dry. So right here, I got it in a spot I didn't want it. So I'm just going to touch that up a little bit. We're almost through all the bases for the highlight. Okay. Done with all of our highlights. And I'm going to come back and do rocks real quick. I'm going to clean out my brush. Make sure it's nice and dry before we do the rock. With, I think, Luthean gray. Or should we do Fenrisian gray? No, I want to do that one. I don't want the blue gray. Give it a good shake. Do it like a muddy rock look. See how that comes out. Might change that back. I might let that dry and take a look at it. Muddier rock look. And if that's the case, then I'm going to have to go back and clean it up. Actually, so I went back over it with a dry brush of that Rhinox hide, and it gives it more of a lighter brown. I think that's what I'm going to go with. For this one, it didn't really work out that well, so I think I'm going to go back over that with other highlights. Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna do the stone. At least until I get a better stone color. The sandbags, on the other hand, let's find a good color to put in there. I'm gonna try the Acadian flesh tone layer. I think I'm going to try that. Or actually, hold on. The flayed one flesh, and then the Acadian flesh tone as a highlight. Or no, it goes darker than, yeah. This would be the highlight. Yeah. I still want some of that brown to be in there, so I'm going to dry brush this in. Got a really dirty color. I'm going to try that one in that color, and then I'm going to clean out my bristles here. And then I'm going to do the other one in this lighter color. Now I'm going to let those dry, come back to them. And then I wanted to put a little bit of green on the trees. And kind of just dry brushing it on there in different places, just randomly. Give it a little bit more. Of a pop. Like it has some moss on it. I'm not going to put very much on this because it's mostly in the mud. A little on the tips of this, and a little bit here. So I added a little bit of green to the wood itself. I don't know if you could see it, but it gives it kind of like a little bit of a mossy look around the bark. Alright, and then the next thing I wanted to do was add that wash, the Agrax Earthshade. But before I do that, I still got to do the Sandbags, so I'm trying to figure out which color I'm going to use. So this one dried. It's kind of like a very skin tone, so I don't really like that one. This one dried, and it's a very muddy white, and I think I'm going to do another coat on this one. I'm glad I have that darker undercolor to kind of give it more of a dark tone. I don't care about the under part because it's in mud anyway. I think that's a good color for the sandbag, so I'm going to go with that for sandbag. I'm just going to dry brush that on all of them. Yeah, I'm gonna let the sandbags dry. Once those are dry, I'll add that earth shade to it so it'll darken them. I won't have to worry about that anymore. So we're not using this one. We are done with highlights. Actually, give me 1 second on that. I'm going to clean this out real quick. I'm going to keep this dry. So I'm going to put this right here. And I want to fix this one real quick. That's fine. Okay. Alright. So, for the ones that are going to have leaves on them, I am going to set those off to the side. Because we have to wait for the leaves before we do the shader on that. I think those are the only 3 I'm adding leaves to. I'll add some to that one too. Alright, 4 of them are going to have leaves, the rest are not. Well, actually, since this one is pretty smooth, and I didn't do a very good job on that one, I think we're going to add leaves to this one too. 5 of them that are going to have leaves on it, and then the rest are not. So the rest of them I can shade. And we're going to start with ones that we have not painted recently. So we'll start with this one. And where's my shader? There we go. Again, Agrax Earth Shade. Give it a good shake. Alright, and then we're basically just slathering the whole thing with Earth Shade. We're going to get that in every little crevice. Give it a nice, dark, earthy color. All those gaps cover up any mistakes we've made. Darken all the colors. And that should give it a nice earth color when that's done. So right now it's a little glossy. It's going to dry. And we'll come back to it. Cut that one. This one. So I don't really know about the log on here. I'm going to try to be less dark with the log. Dry off my brush a little bit, and I'm going to get that off the log a little bit. I don't want the log too dark on top. Alright, so we have all of our shaders done except for the ones that need leaves put on them. We're going to wait on the leaves, or the coffee filters to dry. Specifically, I just need one of them to dry to get the leaves that we need. And that is the one that we added more colors to, like the green and the brown and stuff. So that one should dry quicker than the other ones because I used less water for that one. Once that is dry, I will be right back, and we will start punching the leaves out, putting it in our little container, and then we're going to add the leaves and then do the rest of the shading, and then we should be good to go. Alright, I'll be right back. Okay guys, so if you're wondering what I'm doing with coffee filters, a couple black containers, and then an empty container here. Basically, I'm getting ready to prep for leaves for our bases here today. Ordered this online, and I got this inspiration from another YouTube video. I completely forgot the name of the YouTuber. But as soon as I find that, I'll add it to the description of the video so you guys can check out his video. But for his base, he got a leaf punch. And I thought it was an amazing idea. He did a great job. And basically, he punched out little leaves to add to his bases. And I thought to myself last night, I was like, well, we have sticks that are basically log size on our boards here. And I figured I would add leaves to our bases to add a little bit more realism to them. And overnight, the bases did dry. So they're that olive drab paint that I was using for the primer, and that's basically what we're using for our whole army is olive drab. It saves us a little time on painting because I'm going for like a World War I, World War II look for the soldiers themselves. I want to test out this hole punch real quick because I just got this yesterday after we got done filming. So let me try this real quick and see what it looks like there. I don't know where the other ones went. Oh, here. We got tiny leaf and a little bit bigger leaf. I think we'll be using the tinier one compared to the big one. It doesn't hurt to use the big one. I think the tinier one's going to be more of what we're looking for. There's supposed to be another tiny one, but it disappeared on me. I don't know where it went. Let's try this again before we continue here. I might have to go grab my other coffee filters because they're a little thicker. I'm not sure if these are going to do it. See if thicker is better. I'll be right back. Alright. Got some thicker ones here. Let me see here. I'm going to move these off to the side. Grab this one. So we do not want this edge right here, so I'm going to cut that off here. Alright, let's test this again. I'm going to set this down. I think that's better. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot better. And I think it'll hold together better than the thinner coffee ones, because we're going to be dipping these in paint and staining them. And then while they dry, we'll be getting ready on painting our bases today. So let's get these stained and ready to go, and then we will be good to go. Let's see. So I'm gonna grab my 2 containers here. We're gonna do 2 different types of paints, and we're gonna mix them with some water. So let me pick out some paints here. Let's see. Let's go with the Caliban Green. The Cochan Flesh, that looks like a nice light brown. Actually, let's go with Greg Brown, because that's way too earth. Maybe some Death World Forest. I think that would be good. I think this might be too green. Let's do some Cadian Flesh Tone for a little bit of orange. I don't think I have any yellows. Yeah, I have a little bit of red. So that'd be good to mix in there. We're going for like a dead, like maybe fall color. So let me see what other paints I have sitting in here. Like a little bit of a darker yellow. There's a reddish orange. Red might be too much. I'm gonna squirt a little bit of yellow in there. A little bit of red-ish orange. And then some normal orange. Okay, add more yellow because I added too much of that. We're going to take some water. And we're going to water this down. I'm going to take a junk brush. We're just going to spread that around a little bit. We're just going to dip that in there and stain it that paint color. Yeah, we just want random yellows everywhere, so when we do punch it, we get those random colors. And then the whole thing's already a reddish orange. And I think I want to add a little bit of this Skag Brown to it. I'm going to have to grab another junk brush for that. Alright, I don't want to waste this, so we're just going to grab what we can, just like a big gloop. We're just going to mix that in there. And then I'm going to lay another coffee one on top of this one. And then hopefully it imprints on the other one. And then I'll hang these up to dry. Because as soon as we're done painting, before we do the shader, or the shading, we're going to need these leaves. Because the shading is going to make those leaves look a little old and help us out with more realistic leaves for our bases. So I'm going to go on ahead and find something to hang this up with real quick. Alright, so I think we added a little bit too much water last time, so I'm going to try something a little different this time. Maybe less water because I think it was a little bit too runny. So for this one, I'm going to take our brushes that already have stuff on it and just brush it on a little bit. Alright, and then we're going to take brush this on a little bit. Then we'll do like an orange wash, I think. So we're just going to slather this on randomly. Almost doing like a dry brush. I think that one turned out a little better. Now that I got those hanging up, I'm going to clean up our mess here, and then we're going to get started on painting our bases. Alright, so we got our paper dry here. Grab one of these leaves if I can and show it to you. That's a little like a dirty old dead leaf color. That's definitely what we're going for there. And then this also comes with like, it looks like dead grass or something. I'm not quite sure what that's supposed to be. I'm not sure if we use that or not. But we're just going to go around and punch a bunch of these. It's okay if they're like crossed, it looks like broken leaves and stuff too. Gets stuck once in a while, so I gotta beat it. We're just making a bunch of these so we have them for later too. We're just going to tear away what we're not using here, make it easier on us. Okay, so after all that, we have a pile of leaves, and I'm assuming dead grass. Obviously, we're only going to want the leaves, so I'm going to separate this real quick and we'll be right back. Okay. So, we got our leaves done. We got a little bit of leaves in there. We don't need a whole bunch. We're going to dip them in these leaves with some PVC glue? Or no, just some white glue that dries clear. Basically school glue. Okay, so I'm gonna get a nice pile of these in the middle. And then you're just gonna dab this glue wherever you want it. Don't forget to clean off the tip of the glue. Okay. So I'm gonna take a brush I don't care about, which actually I'm gonna grab that ruined brush from earlier. This one's pretty bad, so I'm just gonna use this one, the one we were using earlier. Alright. So for this one right here, I'm going to cover up most of this with leaves. Just going to put a dab on there. We're going to spread that around to where we want the leaves. We want it to look kind of random. I think that's good right there. And we're just going to dip this in our leaves here. We're just going to let that dry. I'm going to add one more leaf on there. And then that one's going to go to our drying board. And then we're going to do the same thing with this one. We're going to add them in random places. Spread that glue out. We're going to dip that in our leaves here. This would probably work a lot better if I had more leaves in here. So I'm kind of just adding a couple here and there. To be honest, these big leaves aren't really cutting it. I'm going to put one big leaf on there. And then I'm going to take the small leaf, put it right there. And then I'm going to take another small leaf, Take a little glue on my brush. Dribble that on top. I think that's good right there. Okay, I'm gonna let that dry. I'm gonna let that one dry. So that was it for the leaves. I'm going to let that dry, and when it's done we'll come back and we'll do some shading on it. Before we do that, I'm going to show you how the shade turned out on all these other bases. So the shade darkened up those sandbags so they're the color I want them now. Like a grayish, worn out, dirty sandbag that's been in the mud. Perfect. Highlights are showing. Perfect. Dirt's darker. It kind of has a little bit of a glossy feel, which is good for the mud. But I don't know if I'm satisfied with that. I'm going to test something on one of these and see if I can get a good gloss with a clear coat of glue. And I'm going to show you the other ones here. This one turned out nice too. See if I can. That's for the commissar. Track with crater. Crater. Track. Rocky mud. Log. Footsteps. I think it turned out really nice. Alright, so the one I'm going to test the clear coat on, I think is going to be the rocky one. And what I'm wanting to do with this one is I'm not going to get the gloss on the rocks. I'm going to, or I should say glue. I'm not going to get the glue on the rocks. I'm going to just aim for getting the mud all nice. I cleaned out that brush with the glue. Hopefully it's still usable. Yeah, it seems to be fine. Okay. So I'm going to get some of this glue on here, and then I just want to do a thin layer of mud. Try not to get the tops of the rocks. When this dries, it'll get kind of like a shiny look. Now I want to see if that is how I want to do this. Instead of going out and getting a dry varnish, which will cost me more money, see if I can do a do-it-yourself gloss. Alright, now that I got that coated, I'm going to let that dry and we'll see how it turns out. While everything's drying, we'll be right back with it all dry. Okay, so this was pretty quick to dry on just the leaves. This one still needs a little bit more time to dry because it's not clear yet. So we're going to leave that and we'll come back to that after we're done here. We're going to take our Earthshade, or our Agrax Earthshade, and we're going to shade these ones we haven't shaded yet. Same way we did it before. We're just going to slabber it on there. Slobber it, slobber it. Here, I'm going to wet my brush first. There we go. That should be better. Now when you're doing this, if any of the leaves fall off, just take them off. Be perfectly fine. This is going to give those leaves like a really aged, like, disgusting color. Like if they're starting to rot already. And we're not going, I don't think we need to do the shade on the tree itself, but I think I'm going to because the tree was burned. So this will give it a darker color. Yep, there goes a couple of my leaves there. I'm going to see if the paint will dry it on there. If not, no big deal. No huge loss. I think this time I'm just going to dab it on the leaf. So let me see here. I'm trying to wet it also so it bends a little bit more around the branches. Let's darken the sandbags. And this wash is going to creep into all those cracks and crevices that we couldn't really get to before and give it a nice darker color. I think I want that one on top a little darker. There we go. Alright, I'm going to let that dry. Let's get our spill here. dab on the leaves. I'm hoping the paint will give it more of a stick. Last one here. Alright, we just gotta let that dry now. And when those are done drying, I'll show you how they turned out with the leaves on there. Go ahead and clean up our mess here. And we are done with the shader. That can go away. So, like I said before, we'll be adding a water texture to our models, our bases, I mean. For the craters, the little holes and stuff like that, we'll start adding this water texture. It'll like seep in there, and we'll push it around, get the way we want it. And we're going to snip this off. So we have that for later. And then that just sits on there. And then I also wanted to bring up, you won't see this right now, but when we actually start doing the models and getting them on here, I have other stuff that I'll be using that will look like bushes and stuff like that. Depending on how they sit and how I like them sitting on the model, I might add like a tiny little like bush, or like I also got I got tufts, and they look a little scorched at the base, and I thought that looked nice, and then some new grass growing in on the top. So I thought that would look really nice going on the base with our muddy battlefield. So we'll probably implement maybe a few of these in there. That, and I grabbed some battlefield steppe grass, and it looks a little scorched, like swampy grass kinda. I thought that would look good too. So we might add this as well. We'll just see how things turn out. Alright. Now this one is almost dry. Now if you can see it, the rocks are still like a little like matted on the top, which is good. Kind of a little shiny from when we did the shader. And then we still got some white in there, but it's starting to the dry glossy, and that's kind of what I wanted, was like a wet mud look. And this is looking really good, so I think I'm going to start doing this to all the bases that are already dry. And then, of course, we'll do the water texture after all of them dry with that glue on there. So I'm going to get my brush that we're using back out. Dry it off a little bit. And we're just going to grab some glue here. And we're going to start just matting it down. There's no real point to me putting it in that foot right there, because that was if you remember earlier in the video, we had our commissar's foot in there, and that's where he's going to be standing. So no real point putting it in there, but I did. I'll just take the excess out of there. So if you don't have any clear varnish, just grab some clear drying glue, rub it on your base that you want it to look muddy, and that will dry a clear coat for you and give it that shiny mud look. You're just going to coat it on there like if you were painting it. The thinner the glue is, the quicker it dries too. So these shouldn't take long to dry. For our next video. Try to avoid the rocks. Or the tops of the rocks, I should say. You don't want to get it onto the sandbags, so be careful around the sandbags. And you don't want it to pull open your holes, because we're going to be putting that water texture in there. Obviously, the ones that we just put Earthshade on, I'm gonna have to come back to those later, and we already know which ones those are because they have the leaves on them. Try not to get it on the log. You do a little bit on the side here because the mud is coming up onto the log, but don't get it on top of the log because we don't want a shiny log. Alright, and then those just gotta dry now. Let's see how these are coming along. See, this is our first test that we did. Almost completely dry. I put a little bit, maybe too much glue on that one when I did it. But nice and wet mud with rocks in there. And then our shader, still a little wet. It's getting there though. So as soon as these are done drying, we're going to come in with the glue, brighten up that wet mud and wet leaves, and then we'll be good on that. This is already dry on the tree right here, so we're going to go ahead and finish what we were doing with the tree. So I'm going to set these off to the side to keep drying, and then this has burnt ends on it, so we are going to want our abandoned black for the base, and then we are going to want to mix in a gray. So I'm going to use Ulthuan gray. I think I said that right. Not sure, but yeah, we're going to use the gray with the black. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take some of the gray. I'm going to put it in our palette here, and I'm going to do a 2-to-1 ratio. That way we get a lighter black, like a really light black, and that's going to be like the almost like the gray charcoal, and then we'll do the tips in black for the dark charcoal. And we're going to want, I'm going to use this trash brush here because we're not trying to do detail, we're just trying to get the tips here. So I'm going to do a 3-to-1. I'm going to clean off my brush here. It gives us a nice gray charcoal color. Alright, we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to come in there with the black for the tip. And while we're waiting for that to dry, this is completely dry now of the glue. So now that's our wet mud look. That one is completely done, unless I decide I want to add like maybe a tuft of grass growing in the rocks or something like that. So we'll see what we do once we get the actual cyan on the base of this. Let's see, do we have any other ones that are finished? This one looks pretty much done. I still see a little bit of white, so it's still drying. Before I add the water to it, which will add a little brown to the water to make it a muddy brown. But once this is completely dry, we're going to add some water into that hole there. Same with this one. Add a little bit of water to the hole. Once it's completely dry, there's still a little bit of white in there. And the other ones are still drying as well. Trying to speed up the process here by blowing on it. But we might have to come back tomorrow and continue filming to finish up these bases, and then we can move on to our upcoming videos. So yes, the other day you saw me prime the Commissar, and he's completely primed now. Yeah?
You know, replace the batteries?
You're gonna give me a second. Alright, yeah, the Commissar is completely primed, and it's ready to be painted for that detail, and then we'll glue it together. So we'll do a Commissar paint video, and then our prime, I went on ahead and primed him as well, and he is ready to go too. So as soon as we're ready for that, we will do a video on putting the prime together. He looks good. I couldn't get the servo skull to really do what I wanted it to do. I might try to bend it and glue it again. Or no, I got it to move to how I wanted it. Pretty flexible material. I'll have it back on this post. Alright, and we'll come back and we'll paint these this guy in an upcoming video, along with painting the entire Scion army. And then the last video that I will be doing for the Scions here is going to be that vehicle build. And I'm going to be adding electronics to it about those LEDs. We'll be doing a test video on testing the LEDs and making sure that we have the proper power source for it and the proper brightness. And then I'll do a video of how I'm going to take apart the vehicle and start putting it all together. Obviously, we're going to prime the vehicle first. Or no, we'll drill the holes first, prime it, add the electronics to it, and then for the vehicle, we're going to drill the holes, prime it, paint it, add electronics. That's the order that we're going to do it. And then we'll put it all together, glue it, and then I have some magnets as well, so we'll magnetize it to switch out weapons. Alright. So I'm going to be right back after all these dry, and we'll continue our video.
Alright. So, I ended up just letting these dry overnight. So, it would help if I turned on my light for you guys. So, I ended up letting these dry overnight. And it turned out pretty good. The leaves look nice and decayed. Get a little closer look here so you can see them. Yeah, the leaves look nice and decayed a little bit. I already went and finished the tips with a little bit of charcoal gray and then black tips for that burnt look. Again, the decayed leaves. Sandbag looks nice and dirty. Some decayed leaves there on the ground. There you go. Better focus. So what we're going to do now, these other ones are dry, which is the ones that we gave that clear coat of glue, and that gave it that wet shine. We haven't done that with the ones that we did with the leaves yet, so we're going to do that right now and get that out of the way and let these dry. And then we'll figure out what we want to do after that. You do something like really thin to the leaves, for one to protect it, and for two to give it like that wet look on the leaves as well. I'm gonna let that one dry. take a little bit of excess glue off so it dries a little quicker. Yeah. I want that wet look for the leaves. Again, there we go. Alright, so there's some rocks on this one, so we're going to avoid the tips of the rocks. You make everything else shiny, those rocks, just leave them alone. And you do like around the base of the rock, that's fine. You just don't want to get on top of the rock, because the rock is above the mud. Wetness to the leaves. And that should be good. Make sure you don't have pooling glue in any of your holes that you're going to be putting water texture in later. I don't want that glue pooling in there, so I'm trying to get it out of the detail on the tracks. That should be good for that one. Alright, now we're done with all the clear coat. Give it that shine. I did see yesterday night that the Adrax Earthshade does come in gloss as well. And if you did not want to do the glue step I did, then just get the gloss, and the gloss works perfectly fine. Alright, so for our next deal that we're going to be doing here, we're going to start adding water texture to some of these bases. And I think I'm going to need a syringe for this. So I'm going to go see if I can grab an old syringe. And I'll be right back. Ow. So I just added a little bit of that clear water texture in there real quick. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of a lighter brown, I think a scrag brown. We're going to add a scrag brown to it. Grab our trash brush. I think I want to make it slightly lighter, or not lighter, darker. So right now that's what we got. I think that's going to be too light. So we're going for like a cloudy day, muddy puddle. It's going to be a little dark than what we have right now. So I'm going to grab, I think that might be too dark. We're going to put a touch of the Kachan flesh in there. Not as much as we did with the light brown, just a little less. So I'm just going to dip it in there and stir it. There we go. That's a lot better. See, that's a lot better right there. It's nice muddy water. Alright. So, I thought I would need the syringe, but I don't think we're going to need it if I use the brush, because it comes off the brush pretty good. A little too much for that one. So I'm going to let those dry. I was messing with this one. A little bit too much, so I'm going to dry my brush off. We're going to come back in, we're going to tap the back side of where we don't want it, and just soak it up with our brush a little bit. I might add a little bit of shade on it to darken it up. We'll see how it dries. We'll come back to it. Why did you do that? Always too much. There we go, that should be good. That one does not need any. That one is good. This one could use one. I think two. Yeah, that looks good. Alright, this one has track marks, so we're just looking to really just fill in some of those track marks. Mostly just the detail of the track. Yeah. I think this one's really fine. I don't think I need to really add anything to this one. Alright, once the glue dries on the other ones, and then these dry, I think we're going to come back with a little bit of a shader on top. Yeah, because it might be a little bit too bright of a dirty brown. I don't know. We'll come back and we'll take a look at it when it dries and see what happens. Alright, for this next part here, I'm going to take our shader, just for these bigger pools. I'm going to put a light coat of that Agrax Earth shade on there. Just to darken it a little bit. I don't know if that's really going to help at all, but I just don't want like a bright brown like what it's doing right now. And if you got a little bit too much, just take your paper towel and soak it up. Or you can even use your brush. I had to fix that one because it had that hole in the middle. So this stuff is a little weird the way it's drying. I might be doing it wrong, I don't know. We're just going to darken them up a little bit with the shader. Alright, we're just going to let those dry again and we'll be right back. Alright, while those are drying, sorry I got a Jolly Rancher in my mouth. While those are drying, we're going to clean up the edging of the basings. So what we're going to do here, we're going to get our abandoned black. I'm just going to do a black lip around it. Don't forget to shake your paint. Give it a nice shake. And this is really the last step, is just getting the base done. The lip of the base, I should say. Just giving it that nice black lip around it. And try your hardest not to get it up on the top. Take it slow if you have to. This is the one that got kind of ruined by the glue, sadly. Sorry if I keep bumping my brush into my camera. And there we go. Nice black lip. Gonna give the top of them a nice pop. Has that nice wet look. Got the dried or the decaying leaves stick, and now that nice shiny black lip. Set that off to the side to dry. You're probably going to see me adjust my camera in a second. I do apologize, but my brush keeps hitting the camera and it's making it hard to paint. Yeah, like that. Okay, so this is it. This one right here is still wet. I keep fixing it. I don't know exactly what's going on with it. It keeps wanting to like make like a little like pool in the middle for some reason, instead of just leveling itself out like it's supposed to. So we'll see how this one goes, but this is going to be the end product for this one. I'm going to adjust the light here so you guys can see it better. Alright, so finished product, MIDI bass. Now, when I do the video where I combine basing with miniature, I might add some more stuff to this. Grass, tufts, stuff like that. Maybe bushes. Some kind of vegetation. And that's all the models there. Or I mean, that's all the bases. Get a group shot all together of them. It's all the bases. I'll take this off the stand chair. Hello, and that's my basing video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And if you'd like to support me a little bit more, there is more details in the descriptions. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, which I already do have something planned here, but I want to know what you want in the next video. Do you want a jungle theme? Do you want a marsh theme? Do you want an urban terrain theme? Just let me know in the comments. We'll see how it goes, and I'll decide from there on what we decide to do. But I do have my next box set coming up for a 5-man team for Scions, and I'm going to get started on those bases as soon as we get done with these videos, which our next upcoming video will be the clipping, the gluing, and the painting of the rest of the Scion miniatures in the Militarum Tempestus Starter kit. Thank you for watching.